Welcome, everybody, to our study of the divine principle. We're going to continue in the principle of creation. We're going to focus this study on the two worlds, the physical world and the spiritual world. And there's the stairway to heaven, and that's the big question. What happens when we die? Where do we go? And what's the relationship of our life in this world in terms of the results in the next world? This is what we want to study. Now, here's where we all began. We all came from our mother's womb, and we started life as an infant, and then we went through, on the physical side, a indisputable process of growth and maturity. We start life as a child, as a baby and a small child, and then we become a young adult, and if we're fortunate, we enter adulthood and then become a senior citizen. And then if we're lucky enough to make it to that point, and I guess the average lifespan today is about 75 years, then unequivocally we know that the next phase of life is going to be the experience of death. Of course, it's very important to note that death can come at any time, not just for senior citizens, but anyone at any moment can experience this situation that we call death. And how we view death really has a lot to do with our perspective on life. And one of the roles of faith is to really give us a window into the hope that there is a continuation of life beyond the grave. Without that perspective, then it's very reasonable, and I'll admit it's certainly very reasonable to think that the demise of the physical body is in fact the annihilation of the person, the annihilation of your consciousness, of your value and your person at your death, the demise of your body. And as we say, it's very important that we have the ability to conceive of eternity, and we certainly have the desire to long for it. It's very important that we can concretely know and have a life vision that transcends the limit of our physical body, which certainly will die. And this is really what we want to study. As I say, we all agree in the physical world that there is a physical world and that we have a physical body. It's very tangible. We can experience it through our 5 physical senses and experience the world around us. There's no theological debate on that. That's pretty concrete. But we're also introducing the idea now of a spiritual world that corresponds with the physical world. And likewise, we have a spiritual body which corresponds to our physical body. For you Bible students, you can find that in 1 Corinthians 15:44. But from the perspective of what we've been studying in the principle of creation, we see that this pair system is a dynamic or a cosmic constant, as we've been saying. The two worlds are modeled after that same principle, as is the individual, with an internal aspect, the spiritual body, and an external aspect of a physical body. And so the two worlds are modeled after that. And as such, we... oops, I'm going the wrong direction. Pardon me. One moment, please. And it's important to note that we do have 5 spiritual senses that correspond to our physical senses, so that we can translate experiences in the spiritual world just as we do in the physical world. So we say that we're a microcosm. The individual with spirit and body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. And the macrocosm would be the two worlds, the spiritual world and the physical world. And of course, the physical universe is vast in of itself, but the spiritual world is even more vast. It's vast on steroids. So the individual, as the image of God, is the microcosm of the cosmos. And when we say cosmos, we mean those two worlds. And as such, we stand potentially as a ruler. Now, we're talking about the ideal situation, which we've also studied has not really come about because of the fall of man. But in the ideal context, the individual, having achieved the three blessings, would be ruler of the two worlds, which is the meaning of the third blessing, to have dominion, not just over the physical universe, but also in spirit. We would have God's authority, which we can see evidence of that, where it is said that we should rule the angels, we should judge the angels, and so forth. So in physical and in spiritual, we were to have the authority of the Creator. And also to be a standard of harmony, or a medium of harmony. One thing that we studied in the principle of creation is that in the operation of pairs, that each member of the pair has to have something in common with the other, and this facilitates give and take action. In the case of the cosmos, the common base is the person of integrity that is united internally and externally, united their mind and body. And the one historical example of that is Jesus of Nazareth. Stood as a medium of harmony between the two worlds because he had integrity in his spirit and body relationship. And thus, around Jesus was a tremendous amount of spiritual phenomena. And thus, the spiritual world is no longer vague to a person like that, but is an experiential reality. One of the consequences of the fall is that we've lost the experiential reality of the spiritual world, and thus the spirit world is subject to doctrines and dogmas and very divergent views. God is able to communicate to the individual through the Spirit, and the traditional ways that God has communicated is one method is through dreams. There's many examples in the Bible, like Joseph's dream, where God communicated his message to Joseph. And many times, not all your dreams are from God, but many times God will use the device of dreams to transmit his message. God uses visions to impart his word to people. And also prophecy and revelations and inspirations is certainly a mode of communication where God imbues our spirit with a certain message. Now, we could say the 66 books of the Bible could be described in that way as revelations, inspirations, prophecy, dreams, and visions. And so it is the original mode by which God would communicate with humanity. The analogy would be like a television station that sends out a signal. The TV station sends out invisible electromagnetic waves. You can't see them, you can't feel them. But if you have a device with an antenna that we call a TV station, or a TV set rather, then you turn on the TV and you get visible images and sounds. Of course, some of those visible images and sounds don't always make perfect sense. And I think he's saying you're fired. I don't know. But the point is, here, something invisible that we can't see is translated into visible sounds and images. And it's a good analogy for God's inspiration. You know, the idea or the root word from Greek for inspiration has to do with the Spirit of God, or the word enthusiasm is from the root word entheos, which means filled with the Spirit of God. So God is transmitting his spiritual energy, which is the reality in the spiritual world, to our spirit, which then we translate, hopefully, into action and accomplish the reality in the physical world. Just as James said, faith without action is not a real living faith. So there really has to be a transmutation of the spiritual energy imbued into our spirit by God, and transmute that into action to create the reality of the physical world. There's also negative spiritual energy that we have to be conscious of. Our spirit has to be attuned to energy the energy of God and not something else, which we will get into in later presentations. But a good example of this was Joseph's dream, where he received inspiration from God through a dream, and he translated that into a public policy which saved the people through 7 years of drought. He created a practical solution to plan for that, and that's really the demonstration of a true leader has to be in touch with the Spirit of God. I think we're going to stop here. This is a good place to break. And in our next presentation on the two worlds, we're going to get into the real dynamic of spiritual growth. You have a great day. God bless you, and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.